Today I'm down in Southern California driving the all-new next-generation Kia Sportage. For 2023, the Sportage has admittedly less sport than it's had in the last two generations, but a whole lot more utility in the back. If you're looking for a turbo Sportage, your only options are now going to be the hybrid and the plug-in hybrid. Instead, the rest of the Sportage lineup is targeting extra utility with a lot more cargo area, class-leading legroom on the inside, and more off-roading aspirations than ever before with this all-new X Pro model. As with the last few generations of Sportage, this has a unique look that we don't really find in any other Kia. There are definitely some design components that are similar to other models, but this is not simply a scaled-down Telluride or a scaled-up Seltos. We have a very distinctive LED boomerang right there, but oddly enough, even in this top-end trim, it doesn't turn into the turn signal, which I think is a bit of a missed opportunity. We do have an LED turn signal here above the projection LED headlights. Now, the headlight and turn signal arrangement, that will change based on the trim level. I like the slim design of these fog lights. Be sure and let me know what you think about that down there. The rest of the grille elements, they definitely change based on the trim and whether or not you get the hybrid. And we have, I guess, a bit of an homage left to the Tiger Nose grille. The closest, I guess you could say, is this little portion right here where it kind of ducks up a little bit and then the hood line drops down a bit right there. The new Sportage is more than just a new nose. We have an all-new hybrid system and plug-in hybrid system, the first time they've ever been offered in a Sportage. We also get a new off-road trim, which is again what I'm driving here, but there's not as much body cladding as you'll find in some of the competition. So if you've seen a recent Subaru or some Mazdas lately, keep in mind that this is a little bit more discreet. It's hard to tell because this one is so dusty, but it's only about an inch surrounding the wheel wells there and then a small amount down there at the bottom of the vehicle. The other big thing to know is that the Sportage has gotten much, much larger. This is about 7 inches longer than the outgoing model, and that almost entirely goes to rear seat accommodation and a huge cargo area in the back. Both those statistics are now absolutely top of their class, and if you want more legroom than you'll find inside here, you'll actually have to skip the mid-size segment and go for a full-size SUV. Ditto for the cargo area in the back, which is nearly 40 cubic feet. Out back, the X Pro gets a little bit of extra black body cladding, but if you don't want that, you can get the regular versions of the Sportage, and honestly, there's not a great difference in terms of off-road capability, because the Sportage is already pretty high off the ground. All models that are all-wheel drive are going to get 8.3 inches of ground clearance. The major difference between X Pro, in addition to styling, is the standard factory tire package. In this trim, those tires are BF Goodrich trail terrain tires in a 235/65R17, so we get a little bit more cushion than you'll find in the regular top-end trims, and you'll see that we definitely have a distinctive wheel. Although it is a black wheel, that's not my favorite. Of course, in this top-end trim, we also see some other differences back here, like full LED tail lamp modules instead of the combination LED tail lights that we find in other trims. Interesting twist, all models have hidden exhaust tips. At the moment, all Sportages are going to have just one engine under the hood, soon to be joined by a hybrid and a plug-in hybrid model. This engine is a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, producing 187 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to a standard 8-speed automatic transmission and your choice of front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. If you choose front-wheel drive, you'll get 28 miles per gallon combined. All-wheel drive will drop that down to 25, and both versions will tow up to 2,500 pounds when properly equipped. If you want better performance and better fuel economy, you should check out the 1.6-liter turbo hybrid or plug-in hybrid. Those are going to be coming a little bit later. You'll get up to 43 miles per gallon combined and about a full second faster 0 to 60. If you want to know more about that model, be sure to check out the video on EV Buyer's Guide. At this time, if you want extra sport in your Sportage, it looks like that's the only way to go because there does not appear to be a 2-liter turbo planned or a 2.5-liter turbo planned. If you want the extra power, you're going to have to either jump up in Kia's line to the larger Sorento, or you're going to have to get the hybrid. Regardless of trim or drivetrain, all versions of the Sportage are going to have a huge cargo area, the largest now in this segment at just under 40 cubic feet. If you want a larger cargo area, you actually will need to find a very select number of mid-size 2-row crossovers because this has a bigger cargo area than you'll find in the Ford Edge. There's also some additional storage space under the load floor, a temporary spare tire, and definitely enough room to put a full-size spare tire under there if you wanted to do that aftermarket. I'm certainly glad that Kia gave us the extra room under here for a full-size spare tire if you wanted to, because that's something that I might do if you wanted to take your X Pro model a little further off the beaten path. Although obviously I've been unable to do my 24-inch roller bag test, my estimate is that 6 will be able to fit back here. We should know pretty soon. Most of the Sportages you'll find on dealer lots are going to have a power driver's seat. This particular model also has a 2-position memory over there on the driver's door. They're also going to have a tilt telescopic steering column with a moderate range of motion. If you're particularly tall, you're really going to like the Sportage because the front seat tracks move quite a bit further rearward than normal. When you really take a look at the legroom figures inside the Sportage, you'll notice that this is class leading for the front and class leading for the back row. If you are a taller person shopping for the Sportage, you should know that the sunroof does cut down severely on interior headroom, so you might want to skip that particular option. The extra length in the Sportage is instantly obvious when you hop in the back seat. With this front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, I have about 8 or 9 inches of legroom left. So this is going to be a lot easier to put things like rear-facing child seats or taller adults in the back. Again, keep in mind that large panoramic moonroof, it is going to cut down on headroom. If I sit here in the middle, however, I still have a reasonable amount of headroom left. Now, one reason you might want to get a mid-sized crossover over the Sportage, even though you're not going to find more legroom, is the width of the rear bench. That's really the only thing lacking in this model, although that dimension too is a little bit wider than before. Over on the passenger side, this front seat is decently back in its tracks, not all the way back, mind you, because those front tracks do move quite a bit further rearward, but we still find several inches more legroom than you'll find in a RAV4, etc. This is the kind of vehicle where if you are going to put a rear-facing child seat in here, you could put a 6-foot-tall adult up front, have that child seat behind, and you simply cannot do that in the RAV4. The rear seats also have a surprising amount of recline to them. The 60% side of the seat is all the way forward to square off the cargo area, and the driver's side is all the way back. You can see it has a total recline of nearly 10 inches. Rear seat passengers also get a padded center armrest with 2 cup holders, USB charge-only ports in the seat back on both sides, something we've seen in other Kia models, grocery bag holder right there, garment hook up there so you can hang your jacket, shirt, whatnot, and then 2 large air vents right in the center console. An interesting twist is that even though the hybrid and the non-hybrid model have the same kind of cargo space in the back, the second row seats are actually a little bit different. This is the non-hybrid model, so right here we find a split 60-40 seat bottom, and you'll notice that seat bottom moves in and out as I recline and unrecline that rear seat back. Putting that down in that position, it enables us to have a bit more room between that seat back and the ceiling of the vehicle. In addition, because the hybrid model stores the hybrid battery pack right here under the second row seats, we not only lose that little bit of additional storage space when the seats are folded, but the seat bottom cushion is ever so slightly higher off the ground. As we look around this interior, keep in mind I am in the very top end trim, so we have this large panoramic moonroof that is optional. The driver and front passenger get height adjustable shoulder belts and height adjustable headrests. In a nod towards sustainability and fabric durability, all models of Sportage now get vegan leather. So this is not real leather in any model. The center portion of that seat back and the bottom part of the seat back are perforated because these seats are both heated and ventilated. You can see that the bolstering is a little bit less aggressive than other versions of the Sportage have been in the past. Moving over to the doors, I apologize for the strong light. It is pretty bright out here in Southern California at the moment, but you can see this has an all charcoal interior. Different colors are available. I really like the two-tone blue and ivory interior that we find in the hybrid model. Over on the front doors and dashboard, we have imitation wood trim. This is something that Kia's been doing very well lately. That faux wood trim continues on the dashboard. Let me know what you think about that styling element. The trim does change based on the trim you're looking at. There's a decent amount of piano black around this interior, like around those passenger air vents right there. We have an injection molded upper section of the dashboard that is after stitched to give it the appearance of multiple pieces, and then hard plastics lower on the dash. There's a pretty decently sized glove compartment on the passenger side. I was easily able to fit an 11-inch tablet computer inside. In the dashboard, there are a few different looks you can get. There is a pretty traditional display available over on the driver's side with a small LCD in the middle. Then there's a mid-level LCD, and then there is this big LCD. So in here, we have a 12.3 and a 12.3-inch LCD. In mid-level trims, the instrument cluster drops down to about 10 inches, but this infotainment system is still the large 12-inch display, although base models do get an 8-inch infotainment system. As you can see, the screen supports full-screen CarPlay integration, and the software is the latest that we find in the Kia envelope. Also, the latest from the rest of the Kia lineup is this interesting and somewhat controversial button bank down here. Let's explain what's going on. This little button right here, this touch button, toggles the controls for this entire interface. We then have a small touchscreen right here from setup all the way over to map. That's what actually changes with those icons. And then the buttons and knobs change function as you cycle through those options, although this little bank always stays in place. That means that your power and volume knob is also the driver's side temperature control. Let me know what you think about that. Now, personally, I tend to set my temperature and forget it, so it hasn't bothered me in the EV6 as much as I thought it would, but I still wish this had a few extra physical buttons. Below that, we have a storage cubby for your smartphone, charging mat down there, USB port, USB-C charge only port. This model does not have a cover over this area, and the center console does change a bit depending on whether you get the hybrid or the non-hybrid. Over here on this side, we find the controls for the seat heating and ventilation, heated steering wheel. We then have the engine start-stop button hiding right over there, a pretty traditional console shifter there. Button for the hill descent control, auto brake hold, auto start stop disable. That's a nice touch. Parking camera right there that gives us access to the 360-degree camera system in the vehicle. Also the augmented reality camera, so you can sort of spin this image around and see exactly what's going on out there. See, there's someone hanging out just right there beside my car. We then have a rotary drive mode selector, which interestingly does not include an off-road mode, although you can command an almost complete lock of the center coupling. To the right of that, we have some innovative cup holders. We've seen this design from Kia for a while. Actually push those in to lock right like that, swing them around, and then you have access to a large slot where you can put a tablet computer or something like that right in there, and then you press these buttons to deploy those cup holders again. Between the front seats, we find a padded center armrest that opens to reveal a moderately sized storage compartment. You can put keys, knickknacks, things like that in there. For some reason, this larger 12.3-inch display offers a bit more customization as far as the look goes than the smaller display available. You can choose between those three various looks of gauge, and then we have this dynamic mode, which I think is a little bit more attractive, where we have more of a digital theme and then a horizon that changes theme based on the time of day. Moving out from there, we have a 3-spoke steering wheel with a split bottom spoke. No paddle shifters on the back, which I find interesting. You do find paddle shifters on the hybrid model. Up here we have some small sport grips. On the left side we find controls for the infotainment system, and on the right side we find the controls for the adaptive cruise control, as well as the buttons for that instrument cluster. Although it's worth noting that you don't find as much information in this instrument cluster as you might find in some competing vehicles. It's basically trip computer readout, status of the all-wheel drive system, and status of the vehicle's active safety systems. More off-road capable crossovers definitely seem to be the latest craze, and that's why pretty much every auto manufacturer has piled on here. From the more trail-rated versions of Jeep models to more TRD Pro models from Toyota and TRD models to even the off-road CX-50 from Mazda, which is trying to be a blend of premium and a little bit more rugged at the same time. We see that same sort of change here in the Sportage with the new X Pro model. This definitely has a slightly softer feel out on the road than the rest of the Sportage lineup because we have slightly smaller wheels. These are 17-inch wheels with a bit more cushion, 65 series tires on this model, and tires that have a bit more of an off-road mission than your regular run-of-the-mill all-seasons. But these are not really off-road focused tires like you might expect to find on certain versions of a Grand Cherokee or a Jeep Wrangler. These are instead, I think, an ideal balance of improved off-road ability, a little bit better mud traction, etc., while also maintaining good on-road driving dynamics. So in that respect, very similar to what we're going to see in the upcoming Meridian version of the CX-50 and also the Subaru Wilderness models, which are obviously a very direct competitor to this Sportage. If you're considering something like a Forester Wilderness and you want something with a traditional automatic transmission and even more cargo capacity in the back, and then electronics that feel a little bit more modern, you might want to put this on your shopping list, because in terms of off-road ability, this is really going to be quite comparable. The reality, of course, is that most folks that buy off-road trims like the one that I'm driving in are really just going to be spending more time on gravel roads or rough dirt roads like I'm on here rather than true off-roading. If you want to go rock climbing or rock crawling in your next SUV, you're probably going to want a Bronco or a Wrangler. But this is an excellent middle ground while still preserving a lot of that daily driver livability. As I said before, if you want to inject a little bit more sport in your Sportage, you're going to want the hybrid model. The non-hybrid model, it's going to run from 0 to 60 in around 8.5 seconds. Performance is likely very similar to the outgoing Sportage. I wouldn't be surprised if 60 to 0 stopping distances were also fairly similar, because this has relatively similar 235 with tires. You should expect the top-end X Pro version to take a little bit longer to stop from 60 because of the all-terrain tires that this model has on it. For this generation Sportage, all trims have gotten a little bit quieter, a little bit softer tuned as far as the suspension goes, and a little bit more relaxed in terms of their personality. Some people might be offended by the thought of an 8.5 second 0 to 60 time, but that is substantially similar to the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, the Nissan Rogue, etc. So really nothing out of the ordinary for this category. Again, if you want to take acceleration to the next level, there are going to be options, but not the same sort of options that we found in previous generations of the Sportage. I'm a little bit sad that we aren't going to see a Sportage with the optional 2.5-liter turbo that's available in the Sorento, but then of course there is the Sorento, and it's not necessarily going to be that much more than the Sportage. Kia has so many crossovers that there is a great deal of overlap price-wise between the Seltos, the Sportage, the Sorento, and of course the Telluride, not to mention their upcoming Niro and of course the EV6, which are on the electric side of things. Some folks might be disappointed by the 0 to 60 time, but keep in mind that most of the competition isn't any faster than 8 to 8.5 seconds 0 to 60, from the RAV4 to the CR-V to the Hyundai Tucson, etc. So this is really right in line with most of the competition. And there is that more powerful hybrid option if you want faster 0 to 60 times. That's an option that we just don't find in something like the Nissan Rogue. And of course, we get all that extra room in the back. The suspension tune is certainly softer than the previous generation Sportage, but it doesn't feel ponderous out on this winding road, even in this X Pro trim, which is going to have less lateral grip likely than most of the other versions due to the tires on this model. Now these are again not truly rugged off-road tires, but they are going to give you less on-road grip than the tires that you find in the rest of the trims in the lineup, and also a little bit more sidewall, so you're going to get a little bit more tip and dive, a little bit more body roll as well. Kia's done a good job tuning the suspension, so this feels pretty accurate out on a road like this, and the rear suspension never becomes upsettled even over rougher road surfaces. The cabin's also pretty quiet. I haven't been able to cabin noise test this at home, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is now one of the quieter options in this group. This feels a little bit quieter than the Tucson, even out on rougher road surfaces. It is definitely more muted than the RAV4. Even though when floored you hear a reasonable amount of the engine inside the cabin, you'll hear a lot less of this 2.5-liter engine than you'll hear of the RAV4's engine inside its cabin, because there definitely seems to be more sound deadening between the cabin and the firewall. Obviously, I have not been able to test this on my usual fuel economy test loop, but I wouldn't be surprised if fuel economy was pretty similar to the EPA numbers. That's basically what we've seen out of the Hyundai Tucson, and the Tucson receives the same engine and same transmission as this vehicle. Obviously, the body is going to yield different aerodynamics, but the two vehicles are not terribly far off. Honestly, Kia has done an incredible job with the Sportage. If you're interested in a little bit more off-road capability, there's a Sportage for you. If you want higher fuel economy, there's one for you as well. If you want a plug-in hybrid, there's a model as well. And if you want a higher level of gadgetry than we find in really any of the competition, including a bunch of luxury crossovers, there's a Sportage for you as well. This dual LCD setup in the dashboard really gives this an interior presence that we just don't see outside of, honestly, a Mercedes, which is kind of an interesting twist. They definitely have copied this design theme from Mercedes, and I think that imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. I'm glad that Kia did it because this is really a great look inside the cabin. Not the biggest fan of the infotainment / climate control buttons down there, but you will get used to it. I have slowly become accustomed to it in my EV6, but I think that everything else about the Sportage is really just a perfect balance of things. On-road handling ability, on-road, driving dynamics, the ride quality, the cabin quietness, etc. Everything is done at a really high level in here, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a competitor that really excels much beyond this in any of those metrics. There may be quieter entries, there may be better handling entries, but you're not generally going to find that combination together really in any of the other competitors. If you want to get your hands on the new Kia Sportage, or as they call it around the world, the Kia Sportage, then you should head down to your Kia dealer right now. Although, if you decide to call this a Sportage in the United States, I also expect you to be calling it a Mazda, and of course, a Jaguar. But at any rate, this is going to set you back at least $25,990, and it is on sale right now. That definitely undercuts a large swath of the competition. If you want all-wheel drive, that's $27,790 starting for that same LX trim. If you're interested in the top-end X Pro Prestige, which is what I have been driving most of today, then you're going to need to spend over $38,000 after that $1,215 destination charge. But even that means that this is a pretty good deal as far as compact crossovers go in America, as long as your Kia dealer doesn't try to add a huge dealer markup on it. And based on what I have seen so far out of the Sportage, I wouldn't be surprised if at least a few dealers tried that, because this is a really good value in the compact crossover segment. It's huge on the inside, it's still relatively easy to park on the outside. It offers over 8 inches of ground clearance, a flexible mode for the drivetrain in there that definitely gives you more off-road capability than you'll find in the average vehicle. And if you want a hybrid, it will go 0 to 60 faster than this, while also giving you better fuel economy and basically the same all-wheel drive system. As always, be sure and hit that subscribe button, because I will have a full review of the Sportage back at home just as soon as I can get my hands on it. But it's safe to say at this moment that this should be at the top of your shopping list if you're looking for a new compact crossover in America, especially if you value gadgets like that big dual screen setup that we find in the dashboard, extra legroom in the rear, and absolutely class-leading cargo capacity in the back. The Kia Sportage has certainly been on the smaller side of things for quite some time, and that has dramatically changed for 2023. This definitely seems to be what the average shopper in the compact crossover segment is looking for. High reliability, we definitely find that in modern Kias. lots of interior room, and a softer tuned suspension. So if you're looking for something overtly sporty, it may no longer be the Sportage as it has been in the past. The last two generations of Sportage have definitely had a sporty bent to them in terms of suspension tuning, handling ability, and the engine options under the hood. But things are definitely changing with this generation. Instead, Kia is targeting probably a broader segment of the automotive buying public with more interior room, more interior comfort, a more comfortable, more quiet interior, and again, that enormous cargo area in the back. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. And of course, if you want to know more about the hybrid version, you're going to find that on our alternative channel, EV Buyer's Guide. Be sure and hit that channel out, hit that subscribe button as well. Find me over at Facebook, Instagram, all those other social places, and I'll see all of you next week.